Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for tuning back in. Now in today's video coming up, we've got, we were fitting a hand dryer, possibly the worst one on the market, and I fitted it. It really is horrific. We've got some garden lighting coming up about halfway into the video. We did a foray into some highway set out work out on the street, which is coming up later on in the video. And then at the end of the video, we go back to that property which we were rewiring, you know, that little 2-bed flat. Now, if you like the video, please make sure, drop a like. It really does make a difference. Let's get into it. Modonful.
Made in China.
That's bent as a f***ing banana, isn't it? That's quite hot, actually. There's a few issues, but of course, time is money, isn't it? That should fix the problem. It's a fucking noisy bastard, Joe. Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning for... We'll keep this in. Thank you for tuning back in. Now, today, we have... I was supposed to do this last week, and as is normally the case here, you just get waylaid with stuff. But we have this top quality, I've never heard of this brand before, Modonful. A quality brand. I actually think it was supposed to be mindful and somebody put a type.
I swear we put typo.
You can always tell when a product is true quality because it comes with a Euro adapter. That's a true sign of quality. Now, this has to be fitted. I've been meaning to do this for weeks because we've got the, I can't actually say the reason yet because it hasn't been revealed yet. But this has to go in here, somewhere about there. And then a bit of trunking down, fuse spare. I'm intrigued to see how powerful this is going to be because, you know, the Dyson air blades, they're like 500 quid a pop, like second hand. They're not, they're seriously expensive. This was 36 quid. So I'm expecting great performance. But it was, to be fair, it was 1600 watts. And they started at like a kilowatt, 1200 watts, and this is 1600. So I don't know whether it just uses loads of energy and doesn't actually create any heat. I'm not sure. we got to fit that there. So that is what I'm going to start this video with now. We've been reviewing the content that went out on Monday's video. And the thing is, you forget. When you record stuff like weeks in advance, you forget what you've recorded, and then when the camera guys edited it and sent it all back to me, you remember those bits. We've just been, honestly, I've been crying with laughter watching that clip on Monday's video with Sarah. Absolutely, our eyes were streaming watching it. Right, okay, so first thing, no sooner have I started, I've broken my drill already. Don't actually even know what that bit was for. It fell off the ladder. Oh, that's the depth gauge. Sorry, don't use a depth gauge, I've got eyes. If only you could portray smell through video, you can understand how disgusting this toilet smells. It's the communal pissing ground for the whole estate, I think, because that door is supposed to have an electronic lock, but unless you push the door hard, the electronic lock doesn't lock. And I think most of the estate come in here for God knows whatever they do. Either that or the boys have a terrible aim because I come in here and there's more on the floor than there is in the bowl. It's a good job they're not trained marksmen because they can't aim to save their lives. I'm going to put it at 1.6 just to mix it up. Actually, no. Normally, when you're in motorway services and stuff, you see this up at high level, don't you? Normally. They don't have it down here because then people dick around with it. So they normally put the spur up high and then they just come down to the... That's what I'm going to do. Okay. All right. Yeah, what's happened to that drill bit? You know when you try and do work on your own house and you just never get around to it because it just takes you infinitely longer to get set up. Right, 2 minutes. I'm not going back to Park Royal to go and get a 5.5mm SDS bit. I'm not doing it. Bend this one back. I've got 2 holes to drill. Don't tell me that you've never done this, all right? We've all been there. It's bent as a fucking banana, isn't it? That's only going to drill an 8mm hole now rather than a 5.5mm hole. Tell you what, I think I'm going to stop while I'm ahead there. I'll go and get another one, don't worry. It's just, you know what it's like to go out and then get stuff and then come back. It's going to take you 2 hours. It's just quicker if I just do that. So what I'll do is I'll just put this one, I'll put this one in James's van and I'll nick his good one. Ah, see? Perfect. There are some people that ask, like when you're drilling into solid substrates and stuff, how do you know you're not going to drill into anything? Well, there's only really, from my experience, there's only 2 ways of doing it. You can use those wall detectors. I've never really had any luck with them. I know Bosch do make one, but put it like this, I didn't ask them. I've not asked them to send me one. I've never ever had any luck with them. And you've got to take the readings when those wall scanners, you've got to take the readings with a pinch of salt. You have to be able to interpret what it's saying. And it's just, by the time you mess around getting it out of the van, setting it up and stuff, you know, half of it again is, it doesn't work every time, but common sense is a good thing. Just have a look. You know, is there a light switch there? Is there a socket there? Is there anything on this wall? There isn't. The water pipes are all exposed. Because it's, everyone thinks it's electric, well you can hit a water pipe, a gas pipe, you know, people do all sorts of weird and wonderful things, but this is a relatively new build and everything's all surface, it's all exposed, so there's no real threat of hitting anything. But also when you're drilling, if you use, and again, not everybody agrees with this line of principle, but when you're drilling, if you use the same drill all the time, you get to know the sound, you get to know the vibration of the drill, you just get to know the tools that you work with. And you can feel if there's like a piece of plastic capping and you hit something hollow, if you just go, you know, if you go slowly, you can hear when you hit the plastic capping. I mean, if you go Gangnam style, I mean, you are just going to go straight through and hit whatever. But if you just go gently, you can feel resistance when you're hitting something you know you shouldn't be touching. I'll give you an example. We were putting an earth rod in. It was down in Buckinghamshire somewhere, and we had to, God, let me get this right. I drill a 10mm pilot hole first before I drill anything. I put a 10mm pilot hole in. Then I'll take my earth rod and I'll bash that into the ground, because they just go in easier if you drill a pilot hole first, especially if it's in like a really heavy dense soil or something. And I started drilling in. I've actually got a picture of it. I was drilling down. I'll put the pictures on the screen now. And again, you know the drill, you know what the substrate you're drilling into, and I could feel there was just something hollow it was hitting. Of course, you don't know 100% what's under the ground. It could be anything. And I checked the water coming in, because I checked everything. Okay, power comes in overhead, so there's no underground cables. Gas, there's no gas there, it's all off bottles. So I thought, what could possibly be there? I saw where the drainage was. So I hit this thing, it sounded hollow and tinny, and I was like, it could just be it could be a stone, it could be anything. Carried on, 15mm water pipe. And it was the water pipe. Again, plans and stuff only take, when you're putting earth rods in, plans only take you so far. You can look at the plans for a house, and you can look at the, you can download services maps for incoming water, gas, drainage and stuff. But they don't tell you, if Schlepp and Kovac have been in, exactly like here. Whole house was about 15 meters wide, and I drilled literally perfectly. In fact, where's the photo? There it is now on the screen. I drilled perfectly right in the center of a 15mm copper pipe. I had a good 10-15 meters of the house, bang on in the middle of a copper pipe. I mean, the odds of it is just, I couldn't do it again if someone asked me to. It was just bad luck. But somebody had teed off the main water supply to go to another house somewhere, but that 15mm copper pipe was the one that was feeding the main house. They diverted the main blue water supply, and that whole house was being fed by a 15mm copper water pipe. Somebody just buried it directly underground. Now, there's no plan or charts or maps that would ever tell you that. So yeah, the point is, when your drill's giving you feedback, listen to it. Don't just keep going. In the end, we managed to plug it, and what you see on the screen was the end result. We had to get a plumber out. He had to turn off the main water supply, solder a new joint in, and they ended up having a garden tap there. So, because I had to put an earth stake in. So, yeah. Right, top tip if you're doing anything with plastic bat boxes. Now, what you can do, I think Toolstation sell these screw fix, and they're just self-tapping multi-packs. You buy these for like 15, 20 quid. But the reason I'm showing you this is because we've all been there when you get to a job in your van and you've only got one bat box left, all right, and the nearest wholesaler is, 3 miles away, and it's like 4:30, you just want to get the job done. If you use countersunk screws, like 1.5 inch eights, this is a 1 inch eight, but if you use 1.5 inch eights or something, they have a tendency when you tighten them on plastic bat boxes, it's a sort of thing, you tighten it, but if you go just an eighth of a turn more, it shatters the box. And if it's your last box, it's a real, it puts a real crimp on your Friday. So your best bet is to use self-tappers. You can buy this self-tapping kit, and like half of them are self-tappers, the other half aren't. They're just large flat-headed screws. Two reasons I like them. A, because the head on them is really, really big. It's much bigger than a standard 1.5" 8, but also it's got a flat base rather than a countersunk base. So it just gives you a better purchase, and the risk of cracking the box is much less if you use a flat-headed screw with a large diameter like that. So it really does make a difference. As we've all been there, when you shatter the last bat box, and that sinking feeling when you open the back doors of the van and you realise that was the last one you had. And then you start looking at your grip fill and stuff and it just all goes downhill. So yeah, it's just much easier to use these. It actually looks nicer as well. The only person who's going to appreciate that is another electrician looking at it, but it does look nicer in the bat box. I was thinking I've got to cut the plug off, but then I'm going to avoid the warranty. But I don't think it makes a lot of difference here. Right, next top tip. What I'm going to do, I'm rerouting this flex through the inside of the unit because it doesn't sit right on the wall. So I'm going to put a stuffing gland in the bottom, route it through. But when you're drilling out plastic with hole saws, when the hole saw hits the plastic, it bites and sometimes it spins off and you get you get a trail of teeth marks on it. So the best way to do it, I've found, is when it bites, go into reverse and just cut through the plastic. It sounds silly, it sounds backwards, but it is backwards. Just cut through the plastic in reverse. It's only soft plastic, but that way, because they're quite large teeth, you don't get that thing where it chews its way through and you end up having to then sort of finish it with a Stanley knife. And there you go, you get a nice neat finish without any damage. It doesn't work on metal, obviously, it just works on plastic, but sometimes actually cutting in reverse gives you a much cleaner finish like that. Many times I've done it where you're in a hurry and you just gouge your way through it, and of course when those teeth hit the plastic, it either cracks the plastic, because this is quite a soft plastic, but hard plastic, so it'll just break. This is an observation about the Schneider stuff, because you know that I use Schneider, right? If you buy their blank plates, the plate screws come on the back of the accessory, like so, and then you just dig them out with a screwdriver. The problem is, the screws that they give you are absolutely tiny, these absolutely ridiculously small screws. I understand it, you know, smaller screws, less metal, less cost, you know, when you times that by hundreds of thousands of these, it adds up. I get it makes sense, right? But if you're fitting that on a wall that's slightly off, it's not true, those screws aren't long enough. These are just, if the wall is perfectly true and the box is sitting perfectly flat, you can just get these screws in, you know, best case scenario. But in reality, in most circumstances, these screws just aren't long enough. Yeah, on these you've got about 2 full turns of thread, which just isn't long enough. So Schneider, if you're listening, can you please put longer plate screws on all of your accessories? Because the accessories are great, but ain't no use if you can't screw them up. No sponsorship from Schneider now. That's the problem. As soon as you say something remotely derogatory, that's why I try not to get too involved in. To be fair, Bosch are really good. I mean, it's not a deal with Bosch. My agreement with Bosch is very informal. It's basically, there's no paperwork as such. It's just, we'll send you stuff, you just give us your opinion, and that was literally it. The only stuff that, from the Bosch side of things, that I didn't like was that it's still today, the worst thing was that DAB radio, you know, the 50-watt DAB radio. It just doesn't cut the mustard in any way, shape or form. But Bosch are okay with that, they're really cool. They're just like, yeah, okay, fine. You know, they just want people's opinions. But yeah, don't take that badly, Schneider. It's just, you know, constructive feedback. 10 amp fuse in. I don't believe in leaving 13 amp fuses in everything. The amount of times you see fuse spurs for lighting circuits, they'll tap off to put a bedside light or something. You open up the carrier, 13 amp fuse in it. You might as well not bother putting it there then, you know? Okay, nothing's gone pop, fizzle or bang. What's the likelihood this is going to go pop, fizzle or bang? Ooh. That's quite hot actually. Right, obviously it only does it once because it This is shit, isn't it? You get 5 seconds to dry your hands and that's it. Why doesn't it fucking work?
Made in China.
Honestly, I've been fitting this since 12 today. It's only 4 o'clock. Fucking Piece of shit. Mode on full, your hand dryers are shit. What did I do then? I mean, you should just have to put your hands under it. You shouldn't have to do anything else. No air is blown when hands put in. Is power off? No. Has the circuit breaker been tripped? No. That's it. That's all it says. If the problem still persists, turn off the power switch. Let's go and do a job that actually earns us some money. Today is the next day. That hand dryer seems to have self-repaired. I went down this morning to have a go and it seems to, I don't know whether I've just scared it into operation because it now works okay. So, first point of business today is apprentices. We are hiring for 2 apprentice positions. Now, there are some caveats to this. You have to be between 16 and 18 and you're doing your first year of your apprenticeship, your level 1, okay? 2 positions are available, all right? We're based in, well, we're literally just off Hanger Lane roundabout, so W5, that's where we're based, all right? So wherever you live has to be local to that area. If you don't email saying you're coming from Abercumsted or somewhere, all right? Because it's just, it's not gonna work, all right? You've got to be realistic with your distance you can travel. That tickled Sarah's funny bone. You've got to be realistic with the distance you can travel, all right? But I'll put an email address here, send your CVs to that. There is a government page which we had to put a job ad on, which I'll try and put that here as well. But the positions are there now. There's 2 positions open, all right? So send your CVs or any gumph about yourself to this email address here. Anyway, we are supposed to have our risks audit on Friday, which is what all of this dross is on my desk. But as it transpires, there's no point in us doing it, so it's been postponed for another 8 weeks, another 2 months. But I'm going through my employee company information. Somebody left a comment once about the main thing you've got to get your head around is the management bit, the managerial bit, and it's so true. It's the hardest bit I struggle with. Because when you're on the tools, you look at all of this dross and you just think, what's the need for it? And some of it is tosh. There is no need for it, but some of it is really important, and it's just trying to get your head into that mental sort of managerial mindset of why this stuff is important. But yeah, the bottom line is I've got to part with another 4,000 odd quid for a risks audit, a company that's going to give us all the information we need for an audit. So that's £224 a month. Plus another 4.5 grand? 4 grand ish,
Yeah.
plus VAT. So actually, on the whole, I'm doing quite well, considering literally about half an hour ago, I was hit with like a 4.5 grand bill. So I'm going to finish my hula hoops, and we'll go and do some work on in the truck in a minute. Right, so next thing I've got to do is I've got another sticker to go on the back of the truck before we go out. So I'm just gonna 2 minutes. I'll just drag it in. All right. Let me go and find out how that's pronounced again. Our Welsh counterpart. Am I allowed to say a Welsh? Apparently it's pronounced Canal Prifyrth, yeah, which is actually sustain highways.
I mean, that's not bad for a posh English boy.
The whole audience know I don't like you. They know it. I do like her, really. Yeah, apparently it's Canal Prifyrth. Yeah, sustain highways. FYI, in case you didn't know that. There's a few issues, right, with 3.5 ton mupes, all right? This here being one of them. To carry all of the signage that you need, this is basically what the back of the truck now looks like. There's a few caveats to this, which I'll explain once we've set up, right? But basically, that's the reason you see the 5.5 ton, you know, the 5.5 ton Longwood base Ivecos. Well, that's one of the reasons they use those, because there's just so much, they're huge vehicles, but they're bloody impractical. And if you're working in narrow urban streets, you can just forget it on those. Yeah, now technically, if you follow that book, which is what we've got to follow, that there is the minimum, that's the minimum amount of signage we need, except this one, which was an optional. I got this one, it was an optional extra. But all the others, that's the minimum requirement. So give me 5, let me set this out and I'll just demonstrate something, which I think is quite interesting to share. Now technically, this book says you've got no more than 30 minutes. So the minute you pull up and put your beacons on, to the minute you leave, you've got 30 minutes to do your job, right? And that's one of the problems with this setup. You cannot, it can't be done. You cannot set up all of these cones and all of this signage, get in the bucket, put your harness on, go and do the job, come back down, close all your cones and signs up, put them all back in. You can't do it in under 30 minutes. It literally, it can't be done. You just can't do it. It took me 30 minutes just to figure out how this strap works. Let me put all these signs out and we're back in a sec.
A few moments later.
That was almost 20 minutes to set all this up. So to put all the signage out, which you can see, and put my harness on, that was about 20 minutes. If you follow that book there, I'll put this up on the screen so you can see it. But it gives you a gauge, actually how long it takes. When you think you've only got 30 minutes, that's the maximum you're allowed. Now, of course, no, in reality, that might be what the book says, but I think in reality, no one listens to it because it's just one of those things you can't achieve it. It can't be done. Now, obviously, we got the taper lights. We don't need those at the moment. But I thought I'd demonstrate that, just set it up just so you can see. I'll go down there. I'll show you from the other end. But that's what we're supposed to set up. But I've been speaking to a lot of, well, I say a lot, 3 different companies I've spoken to about this, just asking, does everybody actually set this up? Like, if you've got to go up there now to change that light, that head up there, put a new photo cell on it or something, how do you do it within the time? How is that possible? And a lot of them, they all turn around and say the same thing. You just don't set up the signage. That's the easiest way. At best, what they'll do, they'll put the keep right sign out and maybe a cone or 2. And that's it. They won't do any more than that because it just takes too long. And also it takes up so much room in the back of the van, they're permanently running overweight. So this one's rated to 4 tons, so for me it's not an issue. But if you're running a true 3.5 ton, you couldn't do it. I'll show you down here. Yeah, so technically, that's sort of the setup. Bearing in mind, that's, you know, I've just done that off the cuff, but that's roughly what it's supposed to look like over there. But can you imagine, to put this up, right, to go and change a street head or something, pack this all up, and then literally move 10 meters or something to go and change another one, you just wouldn't do it. So I think this is why a lot of companies don't bother. They just put the, I mean, I'm not saying you should do it, but what the book says and then what actually happens in reality are 2 different things. But that's what it's supposed to look like, I think. Yeah, from the other side, that's what you see. The only difference is on this side, you haven't got the keep right signs because it's not on that side of the road. Every time I've seen like Conways or big companies pull up on the side of the road, I've pulled in just to see what they do. And I mean, they don't do anything like this. It's not, this is like super thorough. And even then, I haven't done this quite right, but it gives you a gauge. But they just hop in there. I mean, I saw one guy in a Conways truck the other day, didn't even put a harness on. He was just no hat, no harness, nothing, just jumped in the bucket with his lights on. But of course, time is money, isn't it? You couldn't do this like 10 times in a day. There'd just be you wouldn't earn any money. So it gives you, I'm just explaining, that gives you the gauge of what the book says to what actually happens in reality. And I'm not saying it's right, because it isn't. But again, you know, time is money. All right, so we're actually just packing down. We're actually doing this just as a practice run. I know I sound silly, but I actually think it's really important. So we're just setting up just to see how easy it is in different traffic conditions, because it's also about how the traffic responds to you. It's really difficult to explain. The traffic responds to you differently depending on what time of the day you're doing it. So you try to avoid doing, this is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's not too busy. But I'm trying to do it at different times of the day when it's really busy, just to see how the traffic responds to you, when it's light, when it's dark, when it's raining. It's all practice at the end of the day, and that's the only reason I'm doing it. It's just repetition, just keep doing it, it's practice. And it's good for when our work does start coming in, because the work is there. I'm just waiting on my bloody highways ticket. It should come in about, hopefully end of October we'll have it. So at the moment this is just practice for that. Oh, and the other thing was this whole 2-man thing. Apparently when you operate a MUP, when you do any MUP course or anything, they tell you that you should always have two people. The amount of companies I've spoken to, utility companies and stuff, where they just send one guy. But again, it boils back down to it's cost, isn't it? Time is money. It's, you know, I don't really know how you respond to that. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. But apparently the amount of trucks that I've seen, big brands, just one guy doing it, you know? And I don't understand how, like, when you're on the highway and you've set all this up, and they're up in the bucket, if they have a heart attack or something, poor bastard dies or something, which does happen. We can't say it doesn't happen, it does. But what do they do in that scenario? I don't know how they get around these problems. That's the only thing I haven't really worked out, the legalities of how they do this. But I'll figure it out, it just takes time. Anyway, we're gonna head back to the unit now because I've got some more stuff I've got to get on with there. So I'll see you in a sec. Right, I don't know what day of the week this is, but James is just off to go and do a breakdown, which has just come in. In fact, you know, a couple of months ago, it was such a good comment, and it's actually one of the things we do now. Somebody said in the comments, I'll try and dig it out, but I know I won't be able to because it was just buried in comments like months ago. But somebody basically said, the way their company work, they try and leave Tuesdays and Thursdays clear, and they book the other days up. And then all the reactive stuff like breakdowns and shit, all of that, they book into Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that way they don't overspill with work too much. And we don't always get it right every week, but we try to do that. It doesn't always work, but that's why we're doing today. So we've got a bit of a free day, and as it happens, a breakdown's come in, and you can fit it in straight away. Then it's not too bad, and then you can juggle the other jobs around in the week. So I've got to move this one out of the way. James has got to come out because he's got to go to that breakdown. So give us 5 and we'll be back in a mo. Right, next thing in the Thomas Nagy managerial process, insurance. That's we had the bucket truck driving along the other day, and when I got home that night, we got a letter through saying it was uninsured, and I'm like, because we have a fleet policy that covers all the wagons, right? So I had to ring up the insurance company and basically say, what bloody hell's going on? We've got a fleet policy, because all the others are insured except that one, but that one's covered under the policy. And they came back to us and they were like, oh, sorry, for some reason the insurers haven't added that van on. We've paid for it, and it's a fleet policy, so we can add as many vans as we want. Yeah, so basically the long and short of it was they had to ring the underwriters to get them to add it on the policy. And right, hang on, let me pick this conversation up because there's carnage here with these vans. Hang on, James, let me just pull out and then you can just drive straight in. Sorry, hang on. Thomas Nagy manager, go! It's like this every day. It is getting more efficient. What the fuck was that? Yeah, so basically I had to ring them up and just say, what's bloody hell's going on? And they just came back and said, sorry, there was a mistake with the insurers. They haven't added it on for some reason. And to be fair, a couple of clicks, like half an hour, it was insured. But my argument was like, well, what would have happened if I'd had an accident in that truck? The brokers have insured the vehicle. They've said, yes, we'll insure the vehicle. But the actual insurers, it wasn't insured by them. Can you imagine basically the ball ache if you'd had an accident in that truck? Because the insurance company will do anything to wriggle out of a payment, especially for something like that. They just won't do it. So anyway, I then ended up printing off our certificate of motor insurance for our fleet policy, and it's now in every van, so in case we ever get pulled over or anything, it's there, clear as day. Right, next job's in Belsize Park, I think. It's a call out that came in the other day. Yesterday or the day before, I think. Outside lights aren't working. I'll see if I can get some content there. May be able to, may not, we'll see. Now, this was a little call out that's just come in. The outside lights aren't working for some reason. They turn this switch on here, and down here, this is actually a double socket, which comes off here. This is a fuse spur for a double socket, but this is a classic for outside work, and sometimes you see this. It's a really common thing I see, where people have taken a switch here and they've gone down to go through something like a double socket. The problem is when you use just normal 20mm pipe, of course that's not a waterproof joint, that's not a waterproof connection. So what happens is the water then gets in the back, and over the course of 6-12 months, condensation gets in, it builds up. In fact, this little water trail here was what came out the bottom of the double socket. So what I've got to do, I'll cut off some of these dodgy ends here. We'll re-terminate them with some Wagos and stuff, and that should fix the problem. I actually disconnected the switch wire up in the garden. The fault's still here, so I'm pretty sure it is just this. Right, let's get going. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've just dried it all out and everything. I'll put this back together. I'll recommend to the client, because I haven't got these bits on me now, but what I'll do, I'll just recommend that we've got to take this out and put a new piece of pipe in, put a new socket there, and instead going through the top, we'll just go through the bottom instead. What I might do actually is I'll just replace this switch at the same time, just for the sake of it, because the rubber seal on this side is pretty worn. I love customers like this one. Old Betty Crocker here, she's lovely. Yeah, she's one of the clients that she's just good as gold. They don't want to know prices, they don't want to know anything. I've just told her this needs to be replaced, and she's just like, yeah, okay, just book it in when you can. Yeah, they don't want to know. That's what I'm on about. Most of the domestic sector ain't like that. It's all nickel and dime, push, best quality, cheap as possible. People like this don't care, but that's why you give them the service, and when things go wrong, you drop everything to go and help them. Fabulous. Right, next job. Right, everybody, it is the next day. Now, we're back at this, it's a little sort of partial rewire we're doing. You remember this one, this was with the old plastic board, and this funny MI cable business which we were talking about. Now, I did make a faux pas in the last video, just it didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. I said this was a TT system, and it isn't. I don't know. I think what I was trying to say is I want to make this a TT system. Anyway, I got it wrong. The point is, we've got this MI, but they've basically got a single core, which is your live, and then the neutral, they've used the inner sheath, they've used as the neutral. And downstairs it's a PME. It was a TNCS, and they've then they've turned it into a PME. And essentially that's basically what you've got up here. I don't really understand is I've just sat here looking at this morning trying to work out why they've done this, because there's a pipe here. You've got a 25 mil conduit, and inside they're dead, but there's a pair of 10 mil tails which they just cut, and that goes straight down to the meter room downstairs. Why would you disconnect this and then put an MI in? Why would you do that? You've got a perfectly good serviceable pipe with perfectly good tails inside it, but they've cut them off to put that in. Why? I can't understand. I don't get it. Why would you do that? You've taken away a perfectly good system. But there must have been a reason behind it, because every single flat in this block has all been done in this formation here. So I'm just going to go downstairs and get a set of the keys for the communal cupboard, and I just want to find this pipe downstairs. You see, these are the old pipes, and there's nothing wrong with them. Why disconnect? I don't get it. They've kept the pipes, but they've just cut all the cabling off. And these are the MIs, which all go downstairs. Why put those in and then leave those? I just don't. That seems like a better solution, because at least that's rewirable. You can run new cabling in, you know? Why put single core? And if you're going to put MI in, why not put a 2-core in, you know? Why put a single core in? It's such a, I just don't understand why. It makes no logical sense. But let me get the keys and I'll go down and have another look again. You see, none of those pipes come into here though. I think maybe at some point in time they used to, and they used to come through that hole there, but they don't now. No, there they are, yeah. That box there, you see them all there? Or is that them? Maybe. Because that's a TNS system down there, that's TNS. And at some point, that was introduced, that earthing bar there. So the neutral and earth are now connected here. Let me go upstairs and just draw how I see this on paper. Right, it's a bit crude, but this is how I can see it in my head, right? So downstairs is a bit of a shit drawing, but you get the idea. Downstairs, it's a fucking noisy bastard, Joe. Downstairs, that's the incomer, all right? So you've got your live, neutral, and your earth coming in. Now it was, at some point, a TNS system. They then converted it to a PME system, right? So they added that block on the side. You know what we were pointing to a second ago? So they basically joined the neutral and earth together like that, okay? So that's downstairs. We've then got, this here is our MI. That's our MI cable coming up, right? So you've got your live and neutral coming up, but we don't have this, I'll get to this in a minute. So you've got your single core MI coming up, which is what we've got here, okay? That then comes into the DB. So you've got your live, neutral, and then all they've done is they've just put a connector block there off the neutral, which comes into the board, which are technically, all they've done is just put a block there and then just gone straight into the board like that. So that's the earth as well, which is essentially the same as that. You've got your live and neutral coming up. That is the same setup as down there. It's no different, right? The only difference is we don't have a separate earth core run in, because in a traditional house, you would have this earth running in separate, like a 10 mil earth, like that. Okay, we haven't got that. That's the only bit we don't have. But theoretically, that setup there is exactly the same as that there. The only issue with this that I see is that if this neutral went down, I was doing this over breakfast this morning, if that neutral ever went down for whatever reason, well, no, yeah, because technically, even if that neutral went down, you've still got that earth. They're linked together, but you've still got, because it was TNS, so you've still got a separate earth. So I don't know. The problem is I don't know whether I'm reading into something that isn't here. Because the problem is every single flat in this building is exactly like this. They're all the same. You've seen it downstairs. It's just all single MIs. Now, some of these are still council houses. They're still council-owned properties which have to have EICRs on. So they must be okay. Do you see what I mean? They must be. Or am I can't be the first electrician to start questioning this, but it's been like this for the last 20, 30 years. And even now, you know, no one's changed it. No one's run in extra earth cables or anything. So am I like looking for a problem that isn't here? But I can't be, because every flat in this block and the block next door, they're all like this. They're all exactly the same, and no one's questioned it. So I don't know. Leave your thoughts below, because I'm still not sold on that that's the correct system. I'm still not sold on it, even though every single one here is like it. I'm not sold that that's right. But I mean, the other way I was thinking of getting around it was a sort of a twofold attack. You could either turn it into a TT system. Now, you've already got a live and neutral coming in, so technically, if you gave it its own earth, this flat would be its own little TT island. It would be its own earth. Now, you can buy mats to go in concrete. You can just dig up this little bit of room here. You can lay a mat in, put the conductive concrete. You could do that. That's one way of doing it. Or I was then looking at these pipes. These pipes go straight down to the meter room. I don't know, I was thinking if you just run a separate earth in from here all the way down to the meter room, technically that would get around the problem, because you're bolting, you just basically run this earth wire in separately, yeah? And that would give you your live, your neutral and your earth, and that would be compliant. The problem is nobody else is running the extra earth wires in. No one else has, so why am I doing it? Or maybe I'm just looking too deep into this, I don't know. Leave your thoughts below. I'd appreciate your feedback on this one, because it is interesting how to get around this. I don't know. I just don't see why there were two perfectly good meter tails there and they were cut out. I don't get that. And at some point, that's the other thing, this has been added in. If you look here, all of this paintwork is all, there's no paintwork here. So at some point, someone's added this bit of board in. Now, there's another pipe there, which I'm guessing just ends in there. That's why I took this cover off. There was a little cover here. I took it off because I didn't know if someone's already run an earth wire in and they terminated it into here, but they haven't. Yeah, answers on a postcard. Right, we are back at the unit. I've got a call out to go and do now over in Belsize Park. But apparently I did a bit of research on this. That supply issue at that building, from what I understand, the DNO used to be responsible for the risers. So all of that used to be, it was a DNO issue. And my understanding is when they privatized it and you had private companies then dealing with it, they all then turned around and were like, well, we're not dealing with that anymore because obviously it costs them money. So they just wash their hands of it and they're only responsible up to the head. But after that is then the building problem. So that's then, it's not a DNO anymore, it's now a BNO, a building network operator. Basically, Camden Council, I guess, they're responsible for that riser. But yeah, that apparently is the reason why it's in that state from what I gather. So a bit of trivia, because I didn't know that, I'd never heard of that, but apparently that is the case. But we're going to wrap this video up here. Thank you very much for watching. Links are all coming up now. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really does make a difference. And we'll see you in a couple of days' time.